everybody. I do see some new faces in the crowd. So this is Circle of Friends Front Porch Chats in recognition of Coopersville's, did I say it wrong again? Anyways, 150th year celebration. My name is Amy Ward and I am the president of Circle of Friends. So this is our second home that we visited this evening. We were at 260 Danforth earlier tonight, and now we are at 80 Mill Street. And before we start, we just want to thank the anonymous donor for the chairs, the Coopersville Observer, the Marsmans for the use of their speaker system, and many research resources, especially from the Coopersville Historical Museum Director and Curator, Meg Lemieux, and many others who contributed. We would like to introduce the homeowners, Marv and Christy Prince. Thank you for allowing us to gather on your lawn and visit your front porch. And at this time, I'll have Marv take it over, and I'll be back.
So don't lean too far back. So anyway, this house was built in 1910 by Emmett and Mary Peck. He was a surveyor, and I'll talk more about that later. But it was purchased in 1945 by Christie's grandparents, Harold and Helene Van Dorn, and we purchased the house from him in 1989. So the house has had three different owners. Emmett, the one who built it, passed away in 1922 and left the house to his wife. And so it's been in the Van Dorn family for about 76 years. Christy's parents, John and Elvina, right there, still live around the corner in a house that has been in the family for even longer. So when John was a boy, he lived in this house and walked over to Grandpa and Grandma Travis's house, where John and Elvina live now. And when Christy was growing up, she would walk over from that house to this house, where her Grandpa and Grandma Van Dorn lived, and our kids would walk back to the original Travis house to visit her grandparents. So there's a pattern there. So a little bit about the house first. It was wired for electricity in 1910, and they had electricity in town. It had a cistern and on the side, a seepage well in the basement. I'm not sure why, because according to Baczynski's, there was water in Coopersville in about 1905 or 6, so I don't know why it was built with its own water supply, but it did. It has oak pocket doors, and it's pretty much original. The main part of the house is pretty much original as it is. It had cedar-shaped shingles on the roof. The phone number from the house was 255.
You remember that?
I'm not saying it.
Mine was 37.
The house plans were bought from a catalog, and we still have the original ad and also the original blueprints. This got
That's why they're called blueprints.
that. Yeah.
Ah.
And then here is the.
Oh my.
Yeah. A lot of people are familiar with like Sears kit houses, and this is
The plans were
a kit house, but not from Sears. This was built this is from Gordon Van Tyne, out of Iowa. And Sears, there was more kit houses. There was like Aladdin that was in Bay City. They built probably more kit houses. They sold more kit houses than Sears did, probably. But Gordon Van Tyne, from this one, they also sold to Montgomery Ward. Then they were Ward's houses, and Ward Way houses is what they were called. There's actually two types of kit houses sold. One was a pre-cut, where they would have every board numbered, and then you would, supposedly anybody could put it together. And if you ever get a chance, there was Buster Keaton made a movie in 1920 called, what was it called? It was called 1 Week. And he has this, he's building a kit house for his new bride, and of course his enemy comes and renumbers the boards, and it gets all messed up. So it's from 1920 that house.
Funny.
That movie was. Their kid houses were mainly from like 1910 until the World War II. And after World War II, they built tract housing, took over. But there was a lot of kid houses, and a lot of them you wouldn't even know are kid houses. But this one was the kind where they just sold you all the lumber and told you to cut it and put it together. But it has like, if we look in the old catalogs, you can find the millwork, the doors, the cabinets, like a mirror that's around the door, the doorknobs and stuff. It's all in those catalogs. So it's interesting. We also sold barns and garages. And there's a one-stall garage out back that's most likely a kit because you see it in the catalog. We have a little barn too, but I don't think that's a kit. The barn has a stall on it. Canal stall on the bottom. Let's see. The house is built with brick and tile. It's not wood. No, hold it up. So it goes like this. Tile. Yeah, like that. And then there's brick on the outside. And the plaster is against the tile.
Oh.
So the walls are about a foot thick in this main part of the house. That way. They probably, I'm sure they got the brick and the tile from the local mills here. They had 3 brick mills in Coopersville, if I understand it right. Along with some, there was a lumber mill there was a brick mill behind us, and then on Grove Street, there was a brick mill there too. I don't know where the other one was. So the original paperwork and deed for the property was bought from Elta Jane Irish in 1910. So that's a name you'll see in the cemetery too over there, Irish. The house was built according to plans with one exception. They added a room and a small porch with a flat roof out back. The room served as an office for the man who built the house, Emmett Peck. Emmett was the Ottawa County surveyor and was the first road commission superintendent for Ottawa County. So here's a quote from the history page on the Ottawa County Road Commission website. Here's the quote. The initial focus of the Road Commission was to provide a system of roads connecting population centers within the county that extended to neighboring counties to facilitate commerce with cities such as Grand Rapids and Muskegon. County surveyor Emmett Peck laid out the route for these early roads. Beginning in 1912, he also acted as the first Road Commission superintendent. There's a display case in the Coopersville Historical Society Museum over there with Emmett's surveying equipment that was donated by his family to the museum. Yeah, one thing that must have made it hard to be a surveyor here is the railroad runs at an angle. So like this property line is in line with the railroad, and that one goes east-west with Randall. And that's that way throughout Coopersville, I think.
Yeah.
So,
True.
the surveying office out back originally had 2 large bookcases, which I suppose was for his surveying books, and we have one of those still in our dining room. Emmett Peck lived from 1858 to 1922 and is buried in the Coopersville Cemetery. His first wife was Mary Augusta Clark, and after she died, he married Flora, who died in 1944. His father was Abraham Peck, who was an early settler in the area who came around 1848, about 3 years after Polkman Township was first organized. Emmett was one of 9 children in addition to 2 that died as babies. I don't know if all the brothers and sisters lived in the area, but his brother George and Charles had a flour mill on Grove Street. In 1891, the flour mill building they had built was moved from Grove Street to Danforth. And I'm sure some of you will remember that building. It was Tom's Feed Mill, that building they just took down a couple of years ago. So, in fact, the brick from this house could have come from Lilly and McCam Brick and Tile Yard. An advertisement for them says it was located near Peck's Mill. So, also in 1892, his brother George was postmaster of Coopersville. His brother Lucius is mentioned as someone who was responsible for the poor farm in Eastmanville. We have some Pecks in the audience. Do you know that? You remember that? You helped with the poor farm in Eastmanville? Okay.
Yes, we do.
I grew up next door to that. So
Oh, okay.
that's why it meant something to me. He also had a sibling named Thankful, which I thought was an interesting name, especially when all the other names in the family were common names like George, Frederick, Albert, Sarah, etc. But Thankful was the first child born to Emmett's parents, Abraham and Julia, after they came to Coopersville. So I guess we could assume that Pecks were happy to be here. Emmett was president of a local bank for 8 years and was considered one of the most successful businessmen of this area. When Emmett was 16 years old, he and 2 of his friends cut 100 cords of wood over 12 days. Emmett received a little over $10 for this work and used it to buy a book about North American birds. He had meningitis when he was 21 and was hurt by a runaway horse when he was 23. But during his recovery times, he stuffed birds and mounted and displayed them in a case. At the time of his death, the display was said to be one of the best private collections of birds in this part of Michigan. So Emmett was elected county surveyor in 1889 and held that office for 34 years until his death. He was both a registered engineer and surveyor. In his obituary, it says that there's not a man in Ottawa County who has gone over it more thoroughly than this veteran surveyor. He has surveyed most of Holland, Grand Haven, Spring Lake, in fact, almost every locality in the county. He has surveyed old corduroy roads in pioneer days and present day cement drives, drains, street lines, lots, both public and private, railroads, interurbans, telegraph, and telephone lines. In fact, there is scarcely a surveying job of any importance in which Emmett H. Peck was not the moving spirit. So, Emmett's first wife was Mary. They had a daughter named Helen who was born in the year 1900. In 1910, the same year this house was built, Emmett's wife Mary became pregnant with another child. Perhaps it was because of this new baby they decided to build this house then. However, things did not all go as planned. The house was built, but in 1911, the mother Mary, along with an infant daughter, died, presumably during childbirth. Imagine how tragic this must have been for their daughter Helen. She was about 11 years old and looking forward to living in a new house with a new baby. Now she lost her mother and baby sibling at the same time. Sometime between 1911 and Emmett's death in 1922, he remarried Flora Isabel Burke of Wabash, Indiana. One of his brothers had married a Burke, I believe. That's how he got to know her, probably. Since Helen married in 1926, Helen is the daughter who was born in 1900. She was married in 1926. We assume that Emmett's second wife, Flora, lived alone in this house from 1926 until her death in 1944. Helen, the daughter, inherited the estate when Flora died in 1945, and her name in the deed is listed as Helen Peck Tenhave. Helen then sold the house to Christy's grandparents, Harold and Helene Van Doren. Now at this point, I thought I couldn't find any more about the Pecks on the internet because I got all confused because there's so many of them and the names are the same and I wasn't sure which trail to follow down. But so I thought I'd look up Helen Ten Haves. I just Googled for her obituary and I found it. And let me read you that a minute. Helen Peck Ten Have, age 104, a resident of Royal Oak, Oakland County, Michigan since 1926. Died January 23, 2005 at Evergreen Health and Living Center in Southfield, Michigan. She was born July 20, 1900 in Coopersville. So if I would have done this earlier, I could have talked to her.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Mrs. Ten Have graduated from Coopersville High School in 1918 and from Michigan State in 1926. She was a longtime member of the First United Methodist Church, Royal Oak, and a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Daughters of Colonial Wars, American Association of University Women, and the Royal Oak Historical Society. She was a supporter of the Cranbrook Institute, and it goes on. But from that, I thought, well, I'll write to the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Daughters of Colonial Wars and see if I can get her application of why she should be a member of it. And sure enough, they sent back information that traced the Pecks back to Joseph Peck, who was a commissioner in the Indian Wars in 1643. The Peck family originally came from England in 1638 on the ship called the Diligent as Puritans, leaving England because they were unhappy with the Church of England. And also the Church of England was unhappy with them because the genealogy went like this. Emmett's father was Abraham Peck III, who was Abraham, whose father was the second, whose father was the first, whose father was John, whose father was Joseph Peck, who came on the ship Diligent in 1838. As a reference, the Mayflower came in 1638. I'm sorry. The Mayflower arrived in 1620, only 18 years before that. And Jamestown was founded in 1607, only 21 years earlier. In 1868, one of the Peck family members, Ira B. Peck, wrote a book about the descendants of Joseph Peck. The book has 440 pages, documenting all the Peck family names along with information such as their occupations, who they married, copies of their wills, and other stories about them. Now, Joseph's brother was the one who initiated the move from England to America. He was a Puritan priest at the first Coopersville School, a brown frame building, and it became Brown School. During the school's 16-year existence, 20 teachers served there. Emmett also went to the school. The school is located on Peck's Corners, but on land owned by Benjamin Cooper, kitty corner to the land owned by Abraham Peck. The teacher was Miss Eliza B. Torrey, who was probably some relative to Julia Torrey, Abraham's wife. She taught 10 pupils in a windowless log house, which did service until 1871. Let's see. Abraham Peck was also part of the founding of the first church in Coopersville. He and some other men built the first church building on Church Street, which is now the Central Family Worship Center, but for years was used by the Methodist Church. How much time do I have yet? Oh, 3 minutes, okay. I shouldn't have asked. Yeah, in 1930, the Coopersville Observer interviewed Emmett's daughter, Helen Peckton Hay. The following is from the book, The Chronicles of Coopersville, written by Jim and Lillian Budzinski. So, if you didn't know already, if you need to know any history from Coopersville, you can ask Jim and Lillian. The article tells of the family being disappointed to discover that their farm was not cleared but a thick woods. However, Julia Peck felt that the first view of the virgin forest on the land was the most beautiful sight. She told how they made their own bricks for the chimney and fireplace of their log home, which was located about 1 mile north of present-day Coopersville, and that's at Peck's Corner. Miss Julia Peck was said to be an expert tailorist. Each year, her husband Abraham took wool into Grand Rapids, where it was woven into cloth. She then made 2 sets of clothing for Abraham and each of their 6 sons. Mrs. Peck missed the spinning wheel she had in Pennsylvania, but was able to borrow one for use. Later, her husband bought a spinning wheel, which a man in nearby Berlin barn had made. It was in good condition and still remained with the family in 1930. And they also have in there about the 1860 presidential election where Abraham Lincoln was elected, and how a few of the men and the Pecks and the Averills, the Lawtons and stuff all got together and listened till 2 a.m. to hear the returns by telegraph. If you ever stayed up listening to the election, that's what they did too in 1860.
Wait for the telegraph.
In 1945, Christie's grandfather and John's parents, Harold and Helene Bedard, bought the house. From what we understand, one of the reasons Harold and Helene wanted the house, they were about the same age as Helen, was because they liked the woodwork. So Helen sold it to them on the condition they would not paint it. And they didn't, and we haven't painted the woodwork either. So I guess I'll stop there.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Yeah. Is Fred Beering, who used to live on 56, was that Fred Peck? Is he a son, grandson? Do you know?
Yeah, I think he is, right?
What is he asking?
Fred Pack, how is he related to
Our dad, Fred?
Yeah, your dad. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's our dad. Yeah.
But how was he?
Was he
from
related?
Was he great grandson or
Well, like this Emmett Peck they were talking about was his uncle.
uncle? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
And my dad knew Helen, the daughter you're talking about, really well because they weren't too different in age. We saw some old pictures. They used to get together here, and everything was done up really fancy, and they'd have all their beautiful clothes on, and they'd have even the guys were all dressed up in suits and everything on Sundays when they got together for dinners, you know.
Okay,
Yeah, and you were, I'm sorry, what's your name then?
Well, I'm Joanne Peck Becker.
Okay. Well, Joanne was saying that when Abraham got here with the covered wagon, that first year the land wasn't cleared and they...
Yes, yeah, they got there. They were told it was cleared land, and they came all the way. And when they first viewed it, it was all old growth. And he said, if it weren't for the venison and maple syrup, they would have starved to death.
I have a question regarding the that brick. Now, there's plaster on the other side. So does that make those rooms warmer?
Yeah.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, we put on an addition out back, and that's regular stick built.
Right.
This part stays cooler in the summer and warmer in the
Really?
winter by far because it's all dead end.
It really helps.
Wow. Yeah.
Isn't it?
It
Yeah.
really don't cost that much to eat this house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
how much Do you know about how much that house cost when they ordered it?
No, I don't. No, the plans were like
$2.
or something. But I don't know. But they would have shipped the wood on the railroad, most likely. But the brick and tile and mortar and concrete would all be from here. They wouldn't ship that. So it'd be hard to know the full cost.
You know, there were just a couple quick things too. There were a couple stories that we heard, and I think there is something in a book in the library about way back when there was one of the pecks where they were out hunting, and they went to shoot what they thought was a deer. Luckily, it didn't hit anybody. It was actually an Indian. They said they would have caused quite an uprising if they had accidentally shot the Indian. And my grandmother used to talk about way back when with the Indians that when the women did a lot of baked goods, you know, on the weekend and stuff, the Indians would hold up how many fingers they had for papooses, and they would leave that out on the window ledge for the papooses, however many they had and stuff. So interesting stories.
They also used to take the apple pies off the ledge, sometimes without permission.
They had good taste. That's right.
Well, he was peck-like trees, I think. And that's a sycamore. He had lots of walnuts, and there were all apple trees here. Even when we moved, there were some